Welcome to the Rural Pastor Podcast with your host, Pastor Andy Addis.
You plant the seeds in the ground, though the fields have long been brown. But Lord, when will your harvest come in? You're giving all you've got to give in the place where you've been sent. But will this labor make much difference in the end? Will no one ever know? Sometimes you feel so all alone. Like the prophet Jeremiah, you may be the one to go to the dying and the broken with a message of hope. To that church on the corner of that forgotten little town, with a room of empty pews where his love can still be found. You may never know of all the seeds you sow, but it just takes one willing soul to make him known.
Oh, we're so glad you're joining us here at the Rural Pastor Podcast. My name's Andy Addis, and I have the privilege of hosting this podcast and pastoring a rural multi-site church in Kansas called Crosspoint. I'm joined by associational mission strategist and not former pastor, just pastor of pastors now, Danny Payne from Flint Hill Association. How you doing, Danny?
Excellente, man. It's good to hear your voice.
Excellent.
Happy New Year to you.
Well, Happy New Year to you. Excellente to you. What's funny is we're still close enough that we can say Happy New Year, but this episode is all about getting ready for something coming up several weeks down the road, which is Easter. It's a little early to be thinking about that for most of us in rural ministry because it's just another Sunday. We just got a few more guests in the house, but I want to challenge us that we can prepare for Easter because it actually does mean something in this culture. It's when you were growing up, did you grow up in a church-going family, Danny?
Oh yeah, I was blessed.
So you grew up going to church all the time. Was Easter a second? What was it? A special day for you guys, or just another Sunday?
It was a special Sunday. We had to dress up a little bit more that day.
They slicked your hair back.
If you're familiar, I'm going to date myself, but there was a great TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
And I did my best to look like Herb Tarlick.
The sales rep? That's so funny.
Yes. I'll send you a picture, Andy, later. You'll get a kick out of it.
Well, I remember, I would like to see that. If anybody knows what we're talking about, and they would be dated, but I always wanted to be Dr. Johnny Fever, and now I've ended up looking like Les Nessman. That's what's going on.
Oh, I love Les.
I hope some of you are going to look that up. Yeah, some of you look that up. Anyway, let's talk about getting ready for Easter. I think one of the things, let's just be honest, pastors, leaders, especially pastors, you preachers out there, one of the things that we get guilty of is we get excited about Easter because we think we're going to have these big crowds. So we put 90% of our effort into having the best message we possibly can. Now, I want to be honest with you. That's a good thing. You should do that. And you say, well, you should do that all the time. Well, you can't do more all the time, otherwise you're not doing more. But yes, if you want to give extra effort and extra thought and maybe come up with save some best illustrations for Easter, that's great. But if that's where your preparation is only on message prep, then you're going to end up being disappointed because there's a stat and it was a Rayner stat, and so I can't give you the chapter and verse for it, but he said this, that Christmas and Easter now are big Sundays, not because we have visitors, but because that's when all of our regulars show up at the same time. In other words,
I should be laughing or should be crying.
Well, we should be crying a little bit about that. Here's the reality, that the average church attender now is 1 to 3 times a month. That's your good church attender. It can be one time a month, but on those holidays, they all show up together. So it looks like the house is full. It's actually a good day because you can actually get the number of people that you're actually are in the flock. That's there. But we did a couple of years ago on a Christmas Eve event, we actually did that, and what we found out is he was absolutely right. The vast majority, there was like less than 5% of those who came were actually guests. They were just the regulars who are showing up at the same time. So I want to challenge us to prep more than just a message and actually see this as a special event in which we can draw the net, because here's another startling fact. I'm going to have to put it in the show notes to get because I wasn't prepared for this, but I'm leading myself down a road I don't want to go, that the stats on people coming to church, it's like 5% will come because of an ad, 5% will come because of a pastor, but it's 60+% of people would come to church if a friend invited them. That's amazing. They're not coming because you're preaching. They're not coming because of the ad that you put on the radio, but they will come if there's a community investment in bringing them that way. So that's kind of where I want to begin. If you only prep the message, you're going to miss out on the fact that there is an opportunity to grow the church, to expose more people to the gospel, but we got to get ahead of that. Does that sound like a good plan?
Let's dance. I like it.
Let's dance. Hey, listen, I'm Southern Baptist. I don't be.
I've seen you groove, man. You got some groove.
I got shoulder dance. That's what I could do. That's a legal dance. Or a foot function. Isn't that what they used to call it? A foot function? It wasn't a dance. It was a foot function.
Yes.
All right. So here, 3 things I want to share with you. The first one is obvious, but it's so obvious we may miss it. How about intentional prayer about upcoming special services? Meaning that you're praying for Easter starting in February. That the congregation is asked to take a knee, that maybe you say, we got people that need to be invited. There's some butcher paper out in the foyer. We want you to write the initials of people that we can be praying for with you. Create a wailing wall to pray for people that are going to be invited to Easter services that year. But to dedicate time to do that, maybe to even call a special prayer meeting once a month for the months leading up to Easter, that we would be prepared. I'll tell you what, just that prayer would create an anticipation in you and in parts of the congregation. Plus the fact, here's what I really believe. When you pray, God hears and he's going to answer. So issue number 1, love to hear your thoughts on this. And maybe if a pastor came to you as their associational guy and said, man, I want to do well with Easter. What do I do? If you suggested prayer to them, would that go over? Does that have weight and validity? What do you think about prayer, as intentional prayer, as a way to get ready for Easter?
I think they would go, of course I'm praying for, but I think if you gave more meat to it, like praying for, like everybody knows people that don't know Jesus. What if you were praying over those people? And what if you were praying specifically about the message that you were going to do? Years ago, Andy, when I was a youth pastor, we would always take kids to our summer camp called Super Summer here in Kansas.
I love me some Super Summer.
You might be familiar with it. I don't know if you are or not, but you know. And I remember there was a girl she always went with us to camp every year. And every year at camp, she would get reconnected to God, and she was on fire for God. And I'll never forget, this is like 4 months before camp, kind of like what we're talking about with Easter. And I looked at her and she said, I'm so excited about camp. I said, let me ask you to think differently about camp this year. And she said, what do you mean? I said, what if you went to camp spiritually well? And she went, what do you mean? I said, what if you were connecting with God now instead of waiting till then? What might that look like for you going to camp 4 months from now? And she said something so profound that I hope it's helpful for us today, is maybe I might bring some friends along with me.
Wow.
Because I've spent too many summers trying to get well with God, because that's always been my focus. And I think about this in this context, Andy, is what if pastors said, what if we were praying and getting excited about that Sunday, that we started praying for the opportunities to invite that person, that coworker, that neighbor, that whoever it is, the kid that I go to school with and sit next to, that we were beginning to build towards and inviting them and being faithful to that.
Oh, I love it. It's just an intentionality that
it is.
And when you get people thinking that way and praying that way, then they start acting in that direction. And so that's a beautiful example. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Pastor, leader, what if intentionally praying, not just, oh yeah, we're praying about it, but getting on your knees personally in the congregation, leading towards that, finding some ways to remember some names and to highlight some activities to say, we're really going to be in this, and we believe that this is going to be a harvest season. So yeah, prayer, intentional prayer, can't go wrong praying, by the way, no matter what. No matter what, that's a great answer. Pray. That's always going to be good. Here's the second one. Invest and invite. Now, this is a strategy that's been around for a while, but let's make sure that we understand the components. We have an invitation culture at church. We have a come and see, but there needs to be a go and tell portion of it as well. And that is the investment. It is super important that if you say, I'm praying for somebody and I'm going to invite them to Easter, maybe you should do some groundwork to prepare the runway before you try and launch that plane. And how do you do that? By investing in them. So single moms with other single moms, what about, volunteering to watch somebody's kiddo so they can go on a date night? And maybe even share that back and forth, create community on that. Deepen the relationship by serving somebody. If you have a neighbor down the street and it snows 17 feet like it just did here, be there before the snow quits falling and start shoveling that sidewalk. And when they go, what are you doing that for? I can get that. And go, yeah, I just wanted to tell you, I care about you. And do the investment part before you do the invitation part. There's a million ways to do this, but if we adopted a strategy where we not only celebrated those who got brought to church, but we celebrated the efforts to invest in lives, and we said, maybe celebrating from the pulpit, hey, we saw the Jones boys out, they were shoveling every sidewalk for a city block, and we just want to say thanks for serving like Jesus. Woo, and we celebrate that. The invest and invite. Yes, we're going to invite. The end of the prayer cycle is to invite, but invest before that. And that's not just for Easter. That's a great strategy year-round for making sure that we have a wide open doors for people who have not darkened the doors of a church in a while.
Andy, that is such a great thought, and the way that you said that, because think about this. If you invest in me before you invite me, I don't feel like a project.
Amen. Yep.
I just, the last thing anybody wants to feel like is a project. But if you invest in me by doing something, what I used to tell my church, there's low-hanging fruit in ministry all around us. Go pick some, whether it's inviting somebody over for dinner, shoveling their driveway, whatever it is. But we don't need to think creatively. Just go do something where you're investing in them so that it's giving you a place, a platform, then to invite them.
That's right.
If we think, and Scripture tells us this, if we think that the resurrection's kind of important, because you know it as well as I do, if that doesn't happen, we got some cute stories.
That's so right. That's so right.
Our faith hinges on Easter, so we should be a little bit jazzed about that day.
I think you're 100% right, my friend. And then all that work on that great message is going to pay off, because there's going to be fresh ears to hear what needs to be heard in that moment. I just love it. Just love it. So prayer, intentional prayer, getting ready for Easter, intentional prayer, followed by an invest and invite culture, teaching and celebrating the investment side, not just the inviting side. And then finally, here's the third one. And the third one I'm going to get a little pushback from. I know this. This is actually fresh meat for me that we're putting into practice here at Crosspoint. But I want to challenge everybody with this, because I believe I got challenged by it by one of my staff members named Jason Waller, and it wasn't much of a challenge. Once he described it, I'm like, oh, I'm in. I'm all in. So let me share with you what he found, and then I'll tell you why I think it's important. First of all, this information is coming from some guys, Andrew Hopper, Bobby Harrington, Rich Birch from Mercy Hill Church. They have a podcast that is called Breaking Barriers, or about breaking barriers. It's called Growing So We Can Go. And they have discovered in the life of their church, and they have boomed, and God's done amazing things in them. But what's happened is that they found that for them to get to next level, for them to grow, like if they had a service of 100 people, but they wanted to have 200 people in that service, right? So they wanted to double their numbers. They want to go from 100 to 200. What they would do is take that 200 number and they would say this: we have to have 20% of that number in service. Not in the service, but serving. And when we have 20% of the expected number in service, it's like it opens the doors and opens your arms for God to give you that response. So like if we said, God, bring 1,000 people, but we still have the same people serving that we had for the 100 that came the week before, where's the faith in that? Where is the preparation and the stewardship in that? So what they're saying is, take whatever number that you want to get. And I know people don't like numbers. They say, well, that's not very spiritual. Well, William Carey said, attempt great things and expect great things. And you say, well, I still don't like numbers. Well, there's a whole book of the Bible called Numbers. You need to get over it. It's truth. Hashtag truth. So for you, if you said, here's what we want for Easter, the number is double what we normally get, or whatever that number is, you need to find out what 20% of that is and have those people ready to love on people in your coffee ministry, in the nursery, in the greeters, in the parking lot. And so one of the ways that you prepare for a special event like that is to prepare the congregation through prayer, investing, inviting, and then saying, and we need this number of people if we expect to have this many people show up. And so that 20% number becomes a marker for how many need to serve to get to that place. Now, I've got some scriptural basis for this, but first of all, I just want to get your thoughts on this because it is an unusual thought to say we have a numerical marker of servers that we need to have if we want to have this kind of attendance at a special meeting.
I don't think so at all, Andy. I'm a pretty avid reader, and last year in I think it was about October, November, I was reading a book, and he posed the question that was really interesting to me. He said, what would happen to your church if God doubled the size of your church tomorrow?
Yeah, wouldn't be ready, would they?
You wouldn't be ready.
Yeah.
And that's where the 20%, what you're talking about, matters. Yeah. Like, are you by not preparing, you're not anticipating.
Yeah, it's a faith issue, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you're not, we'll just bump up a little bit, but we're not, if you're not expecting people to show up, if you're not excited that people are showing up, and then you just said it earlier, you get what you get.
That's right. That's right. So let me throw a couple. You said you have prayer, you have biblical support for this? Absolutely. 2 Kings chapter 4, we have this great story. Remember Elijah and the widow who, she says, I got nothing left. All I got is left is this little jar of oil. And what did he tell her to do? Elisha said, go to all your neighbors, gather up as many empty jars as you possibly can. And she did, and he says, start pouring. And she starts pouring, and she starts pouring out of this little jar and filling all these jars. And I love the end where it says this in verse 6 in 2 Kings chapter 4. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, bring me another one. But he replied, there is not a jar left. Then the oil stopped flowing. I mean, that oil was going to flow as long as there were jars to fill. And there's this connection that, Elisha is teaching her in this. The wider your arms, the more God can fill them. If we go back to, where is it? In 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 10, there was a book that was written called The Prayer of Jabez. Do you remember those words? Jabez called upon the Lord of Israel, saying, oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my border, and that your hand might be with me, and that you would keep me from harm, so that it might not bring me pain. Enlarge my borders. It's very reminiscent of Isaiah chapter 54, verses 2 and 3. Enlarge the place of your tent, and let the curtains of your habitations be stretched out. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords and strengthen the stakes. This seems to be what Jesus said, if you're faithful in little, then I'll make you faithful over much. And so I just think that this part of this preparation, this anticipate, I love the word you used, anticipation. If we say we only need 10 people to manage our church on a normal given weekend, but man, we know we want this many people to come and it would take this many to serve on Easter, do it. Plan for it. The worst case scenario is that you have too much help. Is that ever a problem in the local church? You have too much help. That's the worst case scenario. But if you enlarge the tent, lengthen the cords, if you bring in the empty jars, then that is showing the Lord you're ready to receive what he wants to do. And he wants your church full. He wants people to hear the gospel. And so I'm a little passionate about this. We should intentionally pray. We should invest and invite. And I think it's a great thing to start thinking in these terms. What goal do we have to see people in our church this Easter? 20% of that needs to be in volunteers as a way to tell the Lord, here's some jars, fill them up. Your thoughts, Danny?
Yep, I do. Andy and you and I have been in church life for a long time. And one of the old things that's out there, and I don't really think it's changed. It's that 80-20 principle, that 20% are doing all of the work.
Yeah.
And they're doing all the giving. What if that number went up?
Oh, yeah.
What if we started seeing that number go up? You know this, Andy, that the more that you're involved, the more that you're bought in. Mm-hmm. And the less critical you become. And you're not so much the armchair quarterback, but when you're involved in the ministry trenches, when I was pastoring the local church, there was something like I had greeters, and there were some greeters, I was like, you're so good, you're going to make Sunday better regardless of what I do. Because what you do is so important.
Love it.
And I just think when you get people doing those things, especially when it comes to Easter Sunday, because all these people come in and especially if they don't really go to church, they don't know. They might know a little bit about the story, but man, what a privilege it would be. And really, because if you start to build anticipation for your church, then you want to see that beyond Sunday.
Amen.
I'm like you. I'm kind of passionate about Easter Sunday because that's what my faith hinges on that.
Because of the resurrection, brother.
Exactly.
If he was not raised, then we believe in vain, but we know he was raised.
That's right.
And we want other people to believe. What a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining in with us. Let me just challenge every one of you. Rural leaders, prep that message, do a good job, but do more than just get ready for the message. Intentionally lead your congregation in prayer. Teach them and give a culture of investing and inviting. And then maybe even think about leading out in a volunteer capacity. Get those numbers where they need to be and inspire yourself to some amazing things. It's going to be a great Easter, but it's going to be a lot of weeks between now and then. And we're with you every step of the way at the Rural Pastor Podcast. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Like the prophet Jeremiah, you may be the one to go to the dying and the broken with a message of hope. To that church on the corner of that forgotten little town with a room of empty pews where his love can still be found. You may never know of all the seeds you sow, but it just takes one willing soul to make him known.
Thank you for joining us on the Rural Pastor Podcast. Special thanks to Chosen Road for our incredible theme music and to 180 Digital for their corporate sponsorship and making all the technical things possible. Rural church leader, we want to remind you that your work is important, that you are important, and that you are not alone. See you again soon for another edition of the Rural Pastor Podcast.